We are in the action of getting a sponsor for a good sound money bill for Arizona, which will be voluntary. We're not flying in the face of the Federal Reserve note. Let that fail as it will on its own time. We're here to help to recreate and to set a law in Arizona, like Utah has, to protect those people who want to deal in gold and silver. Not like the poor Mr. Von Nothaus, who had the SWAT teams come into his home. You probably read about that. But to protect us and to preserve gold and silver as the founders gave it to us. So we'll just go through this and then we'll have some questions later and maybe we can get an idea. But we came here because we would like for some of you to help us. We're trying to get sponsor right now for the bill. The President of the Senate is very much for it, Andy Biggs. And some of you could help very much. You'll leave your information later so we can contact you for when such a bill may get into committee or wherever it is, or helping us to choose people to co-sponsor. So we would appreciate any help you can give us just simply by emailing them and calling and putting in a good word. Okay. Healing the hurting economy. It's self-explanatory there. The next frame. Oh, there we go.
Maybe not so close.
Okay, since legislators covenanted, and that's what it is, folks. That's a covenant right there. That's a covenant to God and your country when you do that. Let's review the founders' intent about what constitutes real money, and they're supposed to uphold that. We looked in the, okay, I see what I'm doing. I'm going the wrong way. We looked in the Arizona Constitution, and it simply doesn't say anything about money that I can find, but it does recognize the Constitution as supreme law of the land. Let's see what the Constitution says. The Congress shall have power to coin money, regulate the value thereof and of foreign coin, and fix the standard of weights and measures. And note that we the people, we created them. Note that we the people did not give to Congress sole power to coin. Note that we gave it power to coin money, not to print it. And in the 1787 constitutional debates, virtually all founders abhorred paper money when you read those debates, and they withheld that power from Congress.
Jim, can you speak up? I'm not sure as everybody can hear well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I can't.
All right, I'm sorry. Their continental paper bills of credit had already failed big, and we also granted no power to emit or issue gold, like they're issuing from the top down today with our Federal Reserve notes. Congress is only authorized to standardize the metal's value by coining it, and to fix weights and measures. That's all in one sentence. The phrase "not worth a continental," you know where that was born. They put out the continental currency hoping to, they put it out as bills of credit. In other words, they were going to back it. That was going to be backed. But all the states saw, gee whiz, this is great. You see, they were financing the war and several other things. This is great. And the states began to push more paper money themselves. And England got into the act by getting bushels of counterfeit and entering it into our system by buying things from us. And so the government never could pay these bills of credit back, and so therefore they failed. Meanwhile, in 1785, before the Constitution, Continental Congress made that, whoops, I missed something back here on this. The Yankee free market had already been circulating the dollar, the taler, they called it. That's why we call it the dollar. And other noble metal for years. Merchants, after the failure of the continental dollar, merchants fell back to the silver and other noble metal for 80 plus years until the irredeemable greenback paper fiat money was government issued for the Civil War. So there's a difference between paper money. The greenback was irredeemable, and of course the founders hated that. Meanwhile, in 1785, before the Constitution, Continental Congress made that Spanish dollar the law of the land. And in 1792, after the Constitution was written, in order to regulate the value thereof, Congress enacted the Coinage Act of 1792. And it says, what does it say? Each to be the dollars or units, each to be the value of a Spanish milled dollar. And it gives you the purity or the weight of it. And this act also standardizes gold and silver coin. So, constitutional money, therefore, as we've seen in these actions which they went through, is valuable metal. It's not paper at all in any form, not even bills of credit, which are supposed to be backed later. This part's fairly self-explanatory. This is the Constitution also. No state shall coin money, emit bills of credit, that's the redeemable paper notes like the Continental dollar, or make anything but gold and silver coin tender in payment of debts. And as for fiat money, redeemable, this is according to W. Cleon Skousen's book, The Making of America, it's just excellent. Irredeemable paper such as greenbacks and Federal Reserve notes was so abhorrent to the founders they didn't even discuss it. So that's out of the picture. Let's forget about that. Go on with the good stuff. Now for a little constitutional reasoning. What about what the Constitution does and doesn't say? Since by the 10th Amendment the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, or reserved to the states respectively or to the people. In other words, if we didn't give them a power, they don't have it. You can't read anything into it, they simply don't have it. But another rule applies to us because we are from where the power comes from. The states and the people have to be prohibited from certain things if they don't want them to do it. So that's what happened. They prohibited the states from coining and emitting. Then, since they did that, yet the states are mandated only to allow gold and silver as tender. So where is any government authority to emit or issue money? It's nowhere. And who is empowered to create, issue, emit real constitutional metal money? We the people. And there's a wonderful quote by Thomas Jefferson. Once again, the central government can only coin and set the standard in a foreign coin. The states cannot coin or print, but must enforce, using gold and silver specie, they call it, exclusively. But it's the people by the self-managing free market. We need to understand that about the free market, even as to pertaining to money. Money should be controlled by the free market, not by a Federal Reserve System or by the government or Congress. But the people through the self-managing free market mine gold and silver wealth and of lesser coins. This is a miracle that the founders left us. This is the way it should be working. Dr. Edwin Vieira Jr., just excellent constitutional attorney. We quote him a lot. I'm just going to read this. Unless the government happens to have gold and silver mines, where does the coinage come from? It comes from the free market through some minter. And the system of minting, which you find in the Mint Act of 1792, which we just read, is what was called free coinage. The mint was open to all the gold and silver that might be brought from the marketplace. And it would cost that individual who had done it, didn't mean to do that. And it would cost that individual nothing to have it done unless, of course, he wanted to have it expedited in 2 or 3 days or so. And they were essentially treating coinage as a public utility. Basically, the government's role was to mint gold and silver, and by putting a stamp on those coins as defined in this statute, 1792, to certify that the weight of the gold and silver was in the official coins that were coming out of the mint, and period, Dr. Vieira says, end of discussion. That's all the power they had, and that they still have. So that should answer a little bit. Now, today, In the very likely case that Washington, D.C. refuses to fully cooperate today in their moral duty to coin large amounts of people-generated gold and silver, or refuse to let us trade Federal Reserve notes for it, who's the power revert to? The states and the people. We can emit money through private mines and mints using the U.S. standard, because the power is within us. Federal government's refusing to carry out its duty. But we the people are now in grave danger under national laws prohibiting it. That is, unless the states make laws protecting them constitutionally as they do it. Help wanted. And we need this desperately. We need a good law to do all these things. Leave that on there so you can read it. Okay, that's too late now, it's gone. Fortunately, other lawmakers have already begun this effort for their states. Utah passed in 2011 and 2012, this last session, Sound Money Acts. Brad Galvez, a brand new freshman representative, ran it, and it got through. This is a step in preparedness. Security allows us to be able to hold up our economy as the dollar continues to shrink. And in my opinion, it's not so much a question as if it shrinks and get to nothing, it's a question of when. And I think many of you must agree with that. To me, he's Larry Hilton, we talk to him frequently. He's a main promoter of this in Utah. To me, providing a sound money option for Utahns just makes sense. Those who would cavalierly shun the time-tested monetary system for the framers gave us in favor of clinging to the failed policies of the status quo Federal Reserve note remind me of those who time and again rejected plans to reinforce New Orleans levees. And we know that story. There's 13 other states besides Utah that are in the process and haven't quite gotten it through, and we want to be one of them. I don't know if we have ours there, do we? I forgot to put ours in there. Anyway, suggested elements of a Sound Money Act, you might want to call it a legal tender choice, so that we can either choose a Federal Reserve note or we can choose, gold and silver. It should be voluntary, the act should be. No one forced. And it's not flying in the face of the Federal Reserve note. Legal constitutional protection for anyone who wants to mine or mint, and to create specie depositories. It's called specie for some reason, gold and silver is. They want to create depositories kind of like a bank, except not, and with convenient debit card and checking capabilities. So that when you buy something, that's all you have to produce. You don't have to bring 5 pounds of gold with you. Anyway, state removes taxation, no capital gains, and property taxes on gold, silver, copper, money. Don't treat it like a collector's item. Treat it as money and don't tax it. Depositories must be 100% reserve. I guess you all know what that means. No fractional reserve banking fraud. Full reserve will be economic strength for Arizona, and it really will be. An office in Arizona State Revenue Department to handle and simplify and all that. The myth that Congress is constituted. Oh, incidentally, our soundmoneyact.wordpress.com is at the top there. We'll have it on some of our stuff we pass out too. We'll have this stuff on there too, on the website. The Constitution empowered to authorize the Fed by printing irredeemable fiat Federal Reserve notes from nowhere. That's a good name for them, notes from nowhere. At very high, it's worse than from nowhere because
it's out of there, out of air.
At very high interest rates to the people. The reality is that since 1913, the birth of the Fed, these fiat notes from nowhere have lost virtually 100% of buying value. What is it now, Bill? Is it 97% or 98? 90 what?
97.
And next year is the anniversary. Is 100 years.
No.
And since the 1700s and long before, gold and silver buying value has remained virtually the same. What a benefit this would be to Arizonans in all those areas. Security of your savings, being able to plan for the future. This is, I don't know why they said greenbacks at the top here. This is the dollar. And ever since the Gold and Silver Act of 1792, the solid line since 1792 when the dollar was backed by gold. And you see it dipping, first of all, the War of 1812 right there. And then Civil War, it took a real nosedive. And then World Wars I and II. And I don't have the dates at the bottom there. I'm sorry, we're not quite on the screen. But, and then it looks like, the next one looks like a side view of the Mariana Trench in the Pacific Ocean, if any of you have ever seen pictures of that. That's from 1971, when we did away with the gold. I think it was under Nixon. And these are reputable charts. This is another funny thing. You don't have to do anything, I understand, to brown eggs. You just create them and sell them. You don't have to doll them up with all kinds of things for the government, because they're natural. Okay, this illustration shows the appraisal value of the same house every 25 years. 1,600 square foot home, $37,700. No, 37, excuse me, $13,500. And that means 37,700 cartons of brown eggs. And then the U.S. silver certificates at the right represents the silver. And you can redeem it, so it's still worth $13,500, and it'll still buy that home. It would still buy the home. And but as we go down 1982, there was no lawful money available. But there is, again, I understand, there's the silver dollars around again, and it'll still take 13,500 of them. Well, what's happened to the Federal Reserve note? Says the price of the house and all these others gone hold steady, but the skyrockets when measured in failing Federal Reserve note dollars, which show a taxable false gain of $161,500. Now, you've heard of the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over again, expecting different results. To me, if anybody can explain to me how a devaluation of the Federal Reserve note goes down, 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 down into the Mariana Trench, makes the silver worth any more than it was. It doesn't. The silver is worth the same thing in buying power that it was, but the note's gone down, and so what did the government do? They charge you capital gains taxes. Why? Because it takes more of the failed money to buy the same thing. And now, is that insanity? To me, it seems a little insane. Of course, I'm not an expert in gold and silver. Our true realistic alternatives maintain status quo, Keynesian economics, until we're despised everywhere and honored nowhere. Or reinforce those levies against a fiscal Katrina catastrophe by protecting Arizonans in their constitutional right to do this. On the next 4 slides, high-level people have long planned fiat global monetary systems for us to jump off on. And what did I say over here? It says, until it's despised everywhere in the top here, then jump off of our system onto another one, and they're waiting for us. Here's one, the UN World Economic and Social Survey, 2010. A new global reserve system could be created, one that no longer relies on the US dollar. The dollar has proved not to be a stable source of value, which is a requisite for a stable reserve currency. We're just barely the world's reserve currency now, as I understand. Just barely. Getting ready to be replaced. A global currency, Bancor, actually invented by John Maynard Keynes, issued by Global Central Bank, would be designed as a stable store of value, but in a dominant role in place of the US dollar. This is the IMF reserve accumulation. I forget what year they did this, but this is their report. And Now, some of you know James Rickards if you've done some investing. He's a well-known Senior Managing Director for Market Intelligence Omnis. The IMF is positioned to, in effect, I think this is a plan to become a global central bank which can issue its own currency called SDRs. That's special drawing rights. That's what they call inside money, I believe. And the money you don't see, it's just created electronically. And so the IMF is issuing its own paper currency also. That would be the bank core. That's what I think they call outside. That's outside money. And like all fiat currencies, it's backed by nothing. So in terms of paper currency, a leveraged balance sheet, and the creation of liquidity out of thin air, the IMF is clearly the way they're going because, as I said, they've already done it. And here's John Maynard Keynes. He invented the bank core, and he quotes Lenin, and it's such an effective tool of destroying us. He uses the word destruction, and it is. And the late Robert Bartley, maybe some of you remember him, one of the editors of the Wall Street Journal, World Money. The world central bank seemed to me a next logical step. Oh, the president's Economic Recovery Advisor Board chairman is widely being quoted as saying a global economy needs a global currency. He's going to help us in economic recovery, I'm sure. And the world elite are on a mission. This is The New American, which is an excellent magazine. Plan to expose a global fiat monetary regime on humanity is well underway. And if serious resistance is not mounted soon, a new world monetary order could be just around the corner. And here is the Communist Chinese central bank boss. He harks back to Keynes again. The creation of an international currency unit based on the Keynesian proposal. That's the bank core. They want to honor John Maynard Keynes by calling it the bank core, because in 1910 or sometime he suggested that. He said it'll be take extraordinary political vision and courage. And he's there with Timothy Geithner, who probably totally agrees with him.
Yeah.
Countries should abandon monetary nationalism. This is a CFR. We're getting into the act. We did already with Bartley and the head of the, what's his name? Volcker. They're both CFR. And then here's one of the inside people at CFR, Ben Stile. Countries should abandon monetary nationalism. We're almost done now. Economic development outside the process of globalism is no longer possible. This is what's really happening, folks, in the high circles. This is what they're really planning that you don't hear on the news. And of course, the British Telegraph, they talk more about it. The G20 leaders have activated IMF's power to create money and begin global quantitative easing. Not American quantitative easing, but global now. The whole thing's for everybody. In other words, we all will be in a bigger soup of doing the same things we're doing now. The alleged Amero, this is the North American Union guy, the CFR again, the globalists. They want a North American Union out of America, Mexico, and Canada. And they suggest the Amero. He's been around for a long time, but I don't think they've given up on that. And last but not least, this guy, Robert Mundell, is a key advisor to Communist China, and he's the father of the euro. And he even wants another one called the Day. So, this gives you a world view of where people are trying to head us. And the solution is to reinforce those levees, like Larry Hilton said of Utah, by gradually reestablishing gold and silver constitutional money. It can be done. And we're going to try to do it here and educate the legislators about it. And to protect people who want to do this. And all, is that it?